Hello, I'm Gunargie O'Sullivan, and I am the host of Red Hot Topics. Today we're going to be talking about Project Inclusion, a report compiled by the Pivot Legal Society. We have Meenakshi Mannoe in the studio with us right now to tell us more about the Project Inclusion. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gunargie. It's a pleasure to be here on Access Television. As you mentioned, I'm the community educator at Pivot Legal Society, and Pivot is a nonprofit human rights organization based in the downtown east side, here on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. At Pivot, we use the law to address root causes of poverty and social exclusion, and the report that we're going to be talking about today actually reflects work that we did across the province starting, I think, in 2017. And this report was actually launched in December 2018. Based on our findings, we spoke to people throughout BC, folks who rely on public space, and I can explain what that means.
Okay.
So there are many different reasons that people may come to rely on public space. They may not have safe housing or any housing. They may require public space in order to access the necessities of life, whether that's healthcare, whether they need to go to different social services, or they may just use public space as a place to congregate with their friends and family because they live in housing where you're not allowed to have guests or family members visit. We also have written this report in the context of a drug policy crisis in the province, and as people may know, there was a public health emergency declared because of the tainted drug supply. So this report is meant to highlight issues related to the policing of people who use substances, the policing of people who rely on public space, and how there's a set of laws and policies that actually, in effect, criminalize and deter people from accessing vital harm reduction services and supplies.
Oh, okay, so you'll be covering a little bit of the struggles and the obstacles that are going on from one insight injection site to another. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so we went throughout BC and we went to 10 different municipalities. Okay. And we spoke to people. Typically we would go to one kind of health service area, so Northern Health, Interior Health, Vancouver Coastal Health, Fraser Health, and Vancouver Island. And we would go to one larger municipality and one smaller municipality. And we would talk to people who were directly impacted by bylaws, regular laws, and policies that outline how they're allowed to be in public space. So to explain that, right now we have a drug policy crisis, but also, as people are well aware, we have a housing crisis. And so many folks have come to rely on public space because they've lost their housing, they've been evicted, or there simply is not sufficient housing available. Mm-hmm. So we talk to folks, and we also talk to service providers who are working with people, so health service providers who can inform us about what it's actually like for people. So when I talk about how law enforcement is impacting people's ability to access harm reduction services, what we found is practices by the police that run completely contrary to a public health approach to drug policy. So if the police set up and station themselves directly outside of an overdose prevention site or a safe injection site, how are people going to access it safely, knowing that they could actually be criminalized upon entering it with whatever substances they have and plan to use there, or leaving? Things like that.
Oh, I get it. So Pivot is really very crucial in making a safer space and place for those who are addicted to drugs and looking for harm reduction through insight.
I think that the work that we do is important, but certainly what we think up doesn't come from us. It comes from people who are directly impacted, like drug user groups, organized groups like Vandu, folks who are really aware, acutely aware of what's happening on the day-to-day, like at the OPS here in Vancouver, and then informing our own campaign work. So in the past, we've worked on 4 different campaign areas: policing, homelessness, sex work, and drug policy. And
I mean, is it safe to say that prostitution, homelessness, and drug addictive behavior are closely related in some way, influence a person's lifestyle?
I think the framework that we use to look at that is like the harms that people who work in gray economies experience. And we use the term gray economies because it denotes people who work in any kind of labor that's not actually covered by traditional employment standards. And that could be street-based vending, it could be survival dealing, it could be street-based sex work. This host of economies that people participate in, and I think there are issues in that work, just like in all work, but the way that those particular gray economies are implicated by really harmful policies does actually impact how people are able to live their lives.
And so a lot of people who are homeless are plagued with the stigma that they are thieves or they're prostitutes or the criminals, basically. So this is what Pivot Legal Society is attempting to advocate for homeless people, to change some policies and procedures in and around the law. There are people who are having their tents searched, and that is kind of legal at this point. Can you touch on that a little bit more before we move on?
Sure. So again, in this report, what we talked about was how there is stigma, day-to-day stigma, maybe how people get followed around in stores or aren't allowed in certain stores, but also stigma is embedded in laws and policies. So that includes federal laws like criminal law, but also municipal bylaws. So for example, some municipalities have attempted to bar people from walking around with shopping carts. Now, if you don't have a place to live, and you need to bring your belongings with you at all times for fear that they'll be disposed of or stolen, what options are you left with? So to even travel around your city with your shopping cart, you're breaking the law.
That's terrible.
And you mentioned tents, and so we've done a lot of work, and my colleague Anna Cooper, who is the staff campaigner regarding the rights of homeless people, has done a lot of work regarding folks who live in tent cities or informal kind of housing arrangements. And so another reason Pivot's been in the news a lot quite recently is related to Anita Place Tent City, which is the longest running tent city of its kind. It's been going for over 2 years. It is in Maple Ridge, and it's in a community that has a significant amount of anti-homeless stigma. And so the folks who live in that tent city are, what I've been told by them is that's a place of safety and refuge, and actually perhaps the only place where they can safely be around their friends because they're subject to a lot of violence in the form of harmful laws and like stigmatizing behavior, and also vigilante violence against homeless people.
That's really sad, and I'm really glad that Pivot Legal Society is there to advocate for the homeless people in these regards. Can you quickly outline, we only got 2 minutes, tell me what the Know Your Rights campaign is. Give me a few rights that we as individual people have in society and the community.
Sure. So the Know Your Rights campaigns that we work on are designed, again, for people who rely on public space, so people who are having really extreme encounters with the police, where they may be searched, subject to an illegal search and seizure of their belongings. They may be street checked, which is a practice that the police do, which is actually not legal. We also talk about the rights of people who are vending on the street, because oftentimes they're told that if they are selling goods, they need to be able to produce a receipt so that they are not charged with possession of stolen property. We really try to target the most extreme human rights violations. For example, here we've done work with the overdose prevention site
and those
the
two
street
police
market.
officers that have been harassing and stalking people of the downtown east side. That will also be coming up very soon for Pivot Legal Society. So heads up, keep your ears and eyes open. For Pivot Legal Society, how do we contact you?
Yeah, the best way to find updates about our work is to go to pivotlegal.org. You can find a digital copy of Project Inclusion. If you have questions about this report, people are welcome to contact me as the community educator, and I'm happy to work with groups to make sure that this really important document gets into their hands and also in a way that best impacts the people who are most impacted by police violence, by law enforcement, and anti-homeless, anti-substance use stigma.
All right. Thank you for listening to Red Hot Topics on Access Television. Thank you.
Thank you.